we'll get started here with Dr. Aliu, our president of the Council of ICAO, who's just arriving. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve Creamer. I'm the director of the Air Navigation Bureau, and like Leslie, I'd like to welcome you to this symposium on remote piloted aircraft systems. We look forward to a very interesting program with information provided by a variety of speakers on the way forward. We are, of course, focusing now on the development of standards and beginning the discussion on how they can be implemented. So I'm really looking forward to the dialogue over the next couple of days. It is my honor as Director of the Air Navigation Bureau, though, to introduce the President of the Council, Dr. Benard Aliu, he hails from Nigeria, but he has a long experience as a civil aviation engineer and then also as a leader at ICAO representing Nigeria, and over the last 4.5 years guiding the Council in leading aviation policy and standards making and now implementation through the No Country Left Behind initiative. So it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Aliu to the podium. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's really my great pleasure to join you today and open this second remotely piloted aircraft systems symposium. This is a very exciting and rapidly evolving area of activity, and one which is presently requiring us to define hundreds of new amendments to no less than 18 of the Convention's 19 annexes. Let me please express our thanks and gratitude to all of those present who have been assisting us in these significant efforts. The terms remotely piloted aircraft system, RPAS, unmanned aircraft system, UAS, or simply the most popular term, drone, brings to mind different activities and operations. These include package deliveries, cargo and humanitarian operations, the provision of internet bandwidth in remote communities, and even possible unmanned air taxis. Literally, thousands of small drones are being sold daily, and these are deeply diverse in their characteristics and features. Many are being sold to individuals who are unfamiliar with how to operate them safely and responsibly in an aviation environment, and this obviously poses serious concerns. Recognizing the associated challenge and risk, the ICAO 39th Assembly urged us to expand the scope of our work and address this emerging and rapidly developing sector. In April of 2016, we formed a small unmanned aircraft systems advisory group, and this group of experts from states and industry has been developing guidance material that resulted in an online toolkit consolidating best practices for states that need to promulgate regulations regarding UAS. As its work progressed, new opportunities and challenges were also identified, such as the future UAS traffic management, or UTM. This topic, along with its fundamental components of registration, communications, and geofencing, will be addressed at the Drone Enable event this coming Friday and Saturday. And I strongly encourage all of you to be there. It is very important for us to understand and distinguish between the different types of unmanned aircraft being discussed, and which ones ICAO is specifically addressing in the standards and recommended practices versus those which will only be referenced in our less obligatory guidance material. To begin with, any aircraft that is intended to fly without a pilot on board is an unmanned aircraft. However, those that will fully integrate with manned aircraft, particularly when conducting operations in accordance with instrument flight rules, require all the same basic features, certificates, and equipment as manned aircraft. This highly capable part of the unmanned aircraft family are referred to officially as remotely piloted aircraft, or RPA. And it is these vehicles which are presently requiring changes to the full scope of the aviation regulatory framework, from licensing to airworthiness to safety management. Then there are other types of unmanned aircraft which do not fit into the category of remotely piloted aircraft. These include unmanned free balloons and a very quick evolving small unmanned aircraft, and for these, ICAO is developing guidance material to help states develop harmonized domestic regulations. To put the scale of these activities into perspective, according to industry studies, some $3.3 billion in revenue was generated by unmanned aircraft system sales in 2015 in the United States alone. US drone manufacturers currently employ about 8,300 workers, a number which should grow to just under 10,000 by 2020 as the economic impact similarly expands to $4.3 billion. In Europe, we see similar potential with an economic market value in excess of 10 billion euros annually being projected by 2035 and over 15 billion euros by 2050. As a consequence of these quickly growing markets and capabilities, it is presently estimated that some 10% of global civil aviation operations will be unmanned in just 10 years' time. This considerable and truly remarkable expansion has been made possible by the very active participation of all industry players, in particular, remotely piloted aircraft system software developers, component suppliers, and companies involved in data communications and onboard optical systems, to name but a few. And we should also acknowledge the involvement of various universities, institutes, and research programs, user group networks, insurance companies, the media, and many more stakeholders that have progressively been involved in this new and challenging area of activity. In this context, ICAO's mission to ensure the global alignment of the various solutions set out is now more important than ever. Our rulemaking efforts are now being led by the Remotely Piloted Aircraft Systems Panel, with its working groups and supported by other panels and committees. This broad scope of work led ICAO to very carefully prioritize and schedule the SARP development process. As a first step, we are addressing the annexes related to the issuance of certificates. This includes the remote pilot license, remotely piloted aircraft systems operator certificate, and certificate of airworthiness. Without these three documents, international operations are not permitted under the Chicago Convention. This initial phase will be followed by the amendment of other annexes that will support the safe, secure, and efficient integration of remotely piloted aircraft into non-segregated airspace and aerodromes. Developing SARPs, procedures, and guidance, however, is not our only goal. In order to maintain the existing level of safety for manned aviation, we also have to assess and address very seriously how these SARPs will be implemented. This symposium therefore plays an essential role by enabling very open discussions among all of the parties, in particular relating to the interaction and collaboration between manned and unmanned aviation industries, along with regulators to enable safe international operations. This includes access to the status of the regulations used in different parts of the world with a view to fostering the emergence of a comprehensive and harmonized regulatory framework to support the activities. We will also be looking forward to your discussions on the benefits of a regional approach to the development of remotely piloted aircraft systems operational regulations. In this respect, regional safety oversight organizations can play an important role in supporting unmanned activities by facilitating mutual recognition of licenses and certificates. This will be essential to the prosperous development of the unmanned industry. Our symposium also provides different operators, international organizations, and academia and others with a great opportunity to showcase and update us on the full scope of current and near-term operations, as well as to share their experiences in training and capacity building. In this regard, I'm looking forward to the outcomes of your more specific discussions on competency-based training and assessment and on related responsibilities of states and operators. In particular, what knowledge, skills, and attitudes the Civil Aviation Authority inspectors will need to acquire. An equally important question is how remotely piloted aircraft system operators will fulfill their obligations by ensuring that their personnel are fully prepared for the safe planning of operations from start to finish that may involve scenarios not envisioned in the manned aviation environment, which we are more familiar with. Furthermore, and as expected, the accommodation and further integration of unmanned aviation in not segregated airspace continues to raise serious concerns for the manned aviation community. States and air navigation service providers therefore need to work in close collaboration to address these challenges and to provide solutions for the transition so that it will take place safely and effectively. In order to integrate seamlessly, new technologies are demanded, some of which are yet to be invented. We can also expect that these technologies will bring benefits to not only the unmanned aircraft industry, but lead to new safety performance improvements throughout the aviation system. And there will also be other impacts beyond these air traffic management aspects. Many other areas not addressed in the framework of this symposium will be affected, including aviation security, airport operations, user charges, and the transportation of dangerous goods, to name but a few. This is why ICAO is committed to holding further events of this nature so that all of these issues are assessed and resolved to the benefit of our many strategic objectives for civil aviation. Consistent with our No Country Left Behind initiative, we will be focusing a lot of attention on training assistance to member states, regulatory and administrative personnel who are involved in the development and implementation of their remotely piloted aircraft system regulation, certification, and oversight activities. To this end, we have developed a 3-day workshop covering remotely piloted aircraft systems regulations, scenarios and best practices for states, operators, and stakeholders. And by the end of this year, one will have been delivered at least once in every ICAO region. So in closing now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take this opportunity to express ICAO's commitment to supporting the safe, secure, and orderly development of unmanned aviation. The potential for development in the UAS realm is considerable, and the challenges to be addressed will require our collective efforts. As always, the active cooperation of all stakeholders will be essential to ensure that this emerging activity yields its full benefits. ICAO recognizes and continues to affirm its leadership role in this respect. I'm convinced that the ideas generated during this symposium, as well as during the drone-enabled event, will play a great role in shaping the very promising future of unmanned aviation. And I eagerly look forward to the pioneering and innovative outcomes of your work. Thank you, and once again, good morning to all of you.
All right, thank you. And again, I'd like to say good morning, everyone. I am Leslie Carey. I am the RPAS Program Manager here at ICAO, and I'll be serving as your Master of Ceremony through much of the week. So you'll see quite a bit of me. But before we continue with the program, I just want to cover a few of the housekeeping items that we always need to share with people coming in. So here in the Assembly Hall, there's no smoking, no food, no beverages, and we would really appreciate if you would turn off or at least mute any cell phones or other electronics that might be distracting during the presentations and discussions. There are emergency exits, both where you came in at the back of the room and off to the sides. Restroom services are over by the elevators. Wi-Fi is available throughout the building. And for anybody who was hoping that we might have interpretation services for this event, I'm sorry, this is English only. We do not have any interpretation. Now, as you can see from the program, we have a full and exciting agenda ahead of us. The sessions are designed to allow the panelists to deliver their presentations and have about 30 minutes for discussion and questions from the audience. We are encouraging you to be very proactive in this. The goal is not just to sit and listen, but to truly learn, which does include asking questions and providing feedback. So to set the stage for our extensive and wide-ranging deliberations, it is my great pleasure to welcome our distinguished keynote speakers. The first speaker, Mr. Alessandro Cardi, who is the Deputy Director General for ENAC in Italy. Mr. Cardi joined the Italian Civil Aviation Authority more than 35 years ago, where he has had a very diverse career covering most areas of specialization. Today, as Deputy Director General of ENAC, he is responsible for the UAS development program within Italy. Mr. Cardi, please, the podium is yours.
Thank you. Dear ladies, dear gentlemen, distinguished guests, good morning. It's a great honor for me to speak in this wonderful assembly room. Well, I had the chance to participate in many other events till now. But before entering the subject, let me underline how civil aviation is continuously facing new challenges, new business models, new perspectives for development of aviation activities. And today, we are affording one of these. When we speak about RPAS, our mind immediately goes to the possible use of these innovative means, and we will be surprised how long could be the list. It is really astonishing compared with the standardized services offered by the traditional aircraft. It's been a challenge for our mind to afford this new field. Our first experience in Italy was to deal with medium heavy size RPAS category, expected to cover long distances and complex mission profiles for government or research activities, with the need to use and share the same airspace used by traditional manned aircraft. It is the case of, in Italy, the Piaggio, the P1HH is a twin turboprop engine derived from the P180, used for cargo services or for monitoring and research. And we are running a research in order to investigate the possibility of a sustainable cargo operation with this kind of aircraft. It's the case of the helicopter, the AW4 Solo from Leonardo, deriving from a commercial helicopter transformed in a remotely piloted helicopter now, and is starting a new phase of research. It is the case of the Falco, another Leonardo product. Is a single engine already used in operations for humanitarian missions for the United Nations, and many other cases and examples we have till now. The major changes when we face these projects, and we are faced from the beginning, were on the level of protection to provide to the uninvolved people, and the necessity to integrate ARPAs in the common airspace, and then to share it with the aircraft, with pilots on command and passengers on board. These are basically technological challenges, where the airworthiness of the aircraft systems and the availability of a reliable detect and avoid system able to provide ARPAs with an autonomous capacity to avoid colliding traffic and a safe and robust command and control system should offer the basis for solutions. In this sense, it will be necessary to demonstrate the maturity of these new systems, including the satellite-based navigation data link. Many research projects are running around the world on these issues, and I think that safe and practicable solution will be offered by industry in due time. On the other hand, the technological level of this category of ARPAs is such that even if it is still in a continuous development, an approach to safety equivalent to the one adopted for traditional manned aviation is possible, then the establishment of an adequate level of safety can be based on technical and operational requirements, organization provisions, and so on. With this approach, the use of consolidated tools like the certification and or the approval of the main component as products, pilots, operators, can be foreseen as an acceptable regulatory tool to ensure a safe and reliable value chain. For the time being in Italy, we are affording the operations of such category of ARPAs by segregating the requested airspace on case-by-case basis. A permit to fly is generally used to establish an acceptable level of risk for operations. Let's say that an effective market for the services that these ARPAs can offer is not yet developed. But what we can envisage is a civil use by government or other public entities. The potential growth of these activities will make not anymore possible, the practice of segregating airspace due to the heavy impact that it has on civil aviation activities, particularly to the commercial transportation. Even the use of the national airspace could easily become a strong limitation for the operations of this category of ARPAs. To promote and support the development of this new promising technology, a safe and effective integration of manned and unmanned aircraft must be pursued, while an internationally recognized regulatory framework will become a necessity in the near future. But let me explore the other side of ARPA's world. In the past few years, new actors have taken the scene. The small ARPAs, less than 25 kilograms, and with the specific concentration on the lower weights. The majority of small drones flying today in Italy is less than 7 kilograms. They constitute an element of novelty that has dramatically modified the paradigm of safety. Small ARPAs like to fly at very low level, less than 500 feet, over the cities and just above people. They used to fly also in direct proximity of any natural or man-made construction, generally known as air navigation obstacles. It is more or less what is forbidden for safety reasons in the traditional civil aviation. The easy access to this new technology, the low cost of it, and the enormous flexibility of the product has determined a booming market, either for production and for operations. The use of airspace by this new kind of aircraft constitutes a big challenge for the civil aviation authorities, and as they do not have regulatory experience and they need a different expertise to properly manage this new technology. As far as the experience we are making in Italy, small ARPAs are used in many fields of application, like aerial photography, movies, precision agriculture, building inspections and thermal mapping, industrial inspections of production sites and systems, infrastructures like bridges, logistic platforms, monitoring of power lines or railways or other linear infrastructure, either for safety and for security reasons. All these activities constitute a concrete market that can be considered still in the starting phase, as it has to be supported, as it can produce quality jobs and valuable benefits to the social and economic growth of our countries. The high number of ARPAs and their use in urban scenarios, either for commercial operations or for recreational use, have raised many questions about the safety of overflown, uninvolved people. the malicious use of them, and lastly, the issue of fair competition between commercial operators and private owners offering commercial services. To provide an answer to the general public expectation for safety, to the public institution responsible for ensuring the security of our communities, and to the private operator that wish to invest in this new market, there is a need for a regulatory framework addressing all the above-mentioned issues. Having in mind the different emerging needs, we approached in Italy a very complex roadmap involving the drone community through their association, and we worked very hardly to promote some basic safety concept well known in the aviation community, but almost unknown by these newcomers. At the end of this difficult phase, commercial operators recognized the need of rules that, while protecting the safety of the general public, could facilitate their business. In order to plan investments, act legally, favor the acceptance by the general public, raise the confidence with customers, and protect their business from unfair competition. Many contracting states have adopted national regulation to create the condition for the safe conduct of RPAS operations in order to ensure general public and stimulate the acceptance of this new flying object. They paved the way for an equal treatment for economic operators wishing to enter in this new market. In Italy, only RPAS used for commercial services are subject to registration. Total number is almost 6,000 drones owned by almost 4,000 operators, 700 of which operate in safety-critical scenarios. A good estimate of the number of small RPAS flying today for recreational use is almost impossible due to a lack of registration, the use of different channels of distribution, like the web, and self-made ones. The approach ENAC has adopted for the Italian regulation in order to keep it simple is performance-oriented, based on a global assessment of the risk of operations, and centered on the role played by the pilot and his competence in assessing the risk of the specific operation on other people. The risk assessment takes in due consideration the contribution given by all the components of the value chain, like the RPAS and its safety features, the pilot, the procedures, the environment, the operator capabilities. The new frontier that we have in front of us, and is a new challenge, is now the beyond line of sight, visual line of sight operations, and the associated UTM. And we need to work on it, and we are working on it. As we can easily imagine, the freedom of movement and in the exchange of services has led soon in Europe to the necessity of common regulatory framework, and in a broad sense, the need for international standards, at least for manufacturing industry. In this field, Italy is working closely with the EASA and the EU Commission to create a European regulatory framework for the benefit of our industry, as well as in the international bodies supported by ICAO, like the RPAS panel and JARUS. And let me conclude highlighting that Italy actively participates in the global effort to define widely recognized international standards and supports ICAO initiatives, having in mind the significant benefits for each contracting state and for industry coming from the harmonized rules. For this emerging technology, industry needs certainty to plan investments, and international rules play a fundamental role in achieving this. Considering the time requested for adoption of international standards, a clear way forward should be established soon. Thank you for listening, and let me express my best wishes for a successful symposium. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cardi. That was excellent and a very good way to start. So, our second speaker is Mr. Earl Lawrence, Director of the UAS Integration Office and the FAA, United States. Mr. Lawrence is responsible for the facilitation of all regulations, policies, and procedures that are required to support the FAA's UAS integration efforts. Prior to joining the FAA in 2010, Mr. Lawrence was the Vice President of Industry and Regulatory Affairs for the Experimental Aircraft Association in Oshkosh, a place that has always been quite fascinating to me. So, Mr. Lawrence, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here in Montreal, and it's great to look out and see so many familiar faces. It's nice to feel a little bit at home, even though this is my first time addressing this particular audience here. I couldn't help but think when you were saying silence phones, how long is it going to be till you ad that says, park all your drones before we start the particular hearing here. So it is great to see everybody joining in on this really adventure that we're all on and dealing with these new technology. Since this is my first opportunity to address you all, let me tell you a little bit about myself and my new organization at the FAA. As was mentioned, I'm the Executive Director of the FAA UAS Integration Office, and it's the latest addition to FAA's Aviation Safety Organization. It was formalized by the United States Congress in September of 2016. Although we're still a relatively new office, it's clear that the agency as a whole is shifted into high gear. We've implemented Small UAS Part 107 rule. We have seen commercial and UAS industry expand to include over 60,000 remote pilots. We've held 3 aviation rulemaking committees. We've developed an FAA-wide integration plan and aligned our UAS research and integration objectives to that plan. We've developed and executed several successful public outreach campaigns to educate the public about how to fly safely and responsibly. The FAA isn't alone in this adventure. I'm sure many of you have contributed to these successes alongside UAS specialists from across the FAA and the U.S. All of us gathered here today are helping to write the story of unmanned aircraft integration. It's a story about collaboration, about innovation, and I think most importantly, about shared commitment to safety. The story of unmanned aircraft is just beginning, and it's one that we'll continue writing together. Drones are changing the world quickly. They are much less expensive than traditional aircraft, readily available, and automated to an extent that our children are flying them. It wasn't long ago that when we were talking about how drones might be used for aerial photography or agriculture, and now these operations are happening on a daily basis. The future is limited only by our imaginations. Package delivery is on the horizon, and highly automated human transport isn't far beyond that. Over time, drone use in our everyday lives will have a huge impact in society. Look at the way drones are playing a larger role in natural disasters. Hurricane season has taken a toll on the Caribbean and the southern United States, but it's heartening to hear the good news stories about drones assisting in a number of different relief efforts. Right now, they're assisting in search and rescue efforts, energy infrastructure restoration, damage assessment of roads, bridges, water treatment plants, and flooded infrastructure. Without a doubt, drone technology is already a real presence in our lives in unprecedented ways. We're having conversations today about a day in the not-too-distant future when a drone taxi may lift you above the rush hour traffic in a dense metropolitan area and make sure you get to your meeting across town on time. Maybe on one of my future trips here to ICAO headquarters, I'll just catch a drone taxi from the airport to the hotel. Clearly, there's a lot to be done between here and there, but it is a there that has only come on the horizon recently. The pace of development is something that we talk a lot about. It's something that inspires and presents new challenges to government because it breaks our norms. In the traditional aircraft industry, new jetliners are introduced maybe once every 10 to 15 years. In the world of unmanned aircraft, new products are developed over weeks, months, not years. This is why the symposium is important and why the FAA will continue to dedicate resources to the ICAO RPAS panel and contribute to the significant work that the UAS Advisory Group is doing. At the last assembly, many states, including the U.S., encouraged ICAO to address the rapidly developing small UAS sector as a priority due to safety concerns. The United States recommended that ICAO adopt an innovative and more flexible approach to integrating small UAS. We are pleased to see ICAO stepping up to this challenge, reestablishing the UAS Advisory Group, calling for UTM proposals, and hosting Drone Enable. Within our respective sovereign governments, we continue to work with stakeholders in this fast-evolving industry. At the FAA, we have embraced a new way of thinking. We know we can't move at the speed of government while the rest of the industry moves at the speed of Silicon Valley. We're redefining our roles as a regulator and moving quicker than ever to ensure safety without unduly stifling economic potential. As you might imagine, some of our stakeholders are frustrated that we aren't moving faster. At the same time, many others would like us to tap on the brakes. The good news is that we continue to make a lot of progress. But the unprecedented rate at which unmanned aircraft are evolving means we have to constantly grapple with new and complex questions that affect a broad spectrum of the many stakeholders that we have in this industry. The up-close and personal nature of some UAS operations is new to aviation and society. This is particularly apparent as we consider the roles of our own governments at the national, state, and local levels. How do we ensure that unmanned aircraft operations can occur with a minimum of disruption and interference, particularly when moving into densely populated areas? What role do state and local governments play? Recently, for example, the mayor of San Francisco explained that he already has a large airport that services his city. But now, in the world of drones, someone has gone and made his entire city an airport. These are big questions, and I think it's extremely important that we get it right as an aviation community. We're facing this together, tackling similar issues, regardless of how our governments or aviation authorities are organized. Collaboration and transparency are going to be key, and we will need to share our successes with one another in order to build a range of strong, harmonized global solutions. The FAA is using our Drone Advisory Committee, or DAC, as a starting point. This Federal Advisory Committee was created to develop recommendations to help the FAA prioritize our integration work. But the work of the DAC is only one of several key areas we're focusing on. We are also continuing to work on a rule for operations over people, and I know that's something of great interest to everyone here, since it's one of the most sought-after operations from the drone community. The FAA Center of Excellence recently completed the first in a series of research projects looking at potential safety ramifications of what might happen when a drone hits a person on the ground. Although we can't yet definitively answer every question, we are starting to understand the risks a little better. The findings of this study are very insightful and should help us as we continue to ensure the level of safety that the public expects and deserves as drones become more ubiquitous in our daily lives. In the near future, we expect the FAA Center of Excellence to present results from another study that looks at a question that's been in the news a lot. What happens if an unmanned aircraft collides with a manned aircraft in the air? And we're looking forward to that report literally in the coming weeks. As many of you are probably aware, public safety officials are giving drones more and more attention, both as a potential tool and potential public safety risk. The FAA is collaborating with our government partners to examine solutions for potential safety and security concerns. In late April, the FAA and our partners completed the 5th and final field evaluation of possible drone detection systems at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. This evaluation considered a combination of technologies, including radar, radio frequency, and electro-optical systems. We also have been working all summer with a group of industry stakeholders to get their recommendations on how to implement an identification and tracking system on UAS. There's no question in my mind that significant milestones that we've achieved so far are a direct result of the good work from stakeholders across government and industry. This collaboration is vital in the United States and, needless to say, equally important at the global level. In order to understand how to leverage this experience at the international level, let me share the current state of affairs in the United States. Today, more than 911,000 operators have registered their aircraft with the FAA. 88,000 of these are specifically registered as commercial use. As I mentioned earlier, we have issued more than 61,000 remote pilot certificates in the 1 year since our rule came into effect. At the same time, we're working to update the processes for granting Part 107 authorizations and waivers, making it easier and faster for operators to capitalize on new business opportunities. We've also published more than 480 facility maps, which show at what altitudes the FAA is likely to approve UAS operations around our nation's busiest airports. Soon, we will be automating this Part 107 authorization process. The FAA has been collaborating with industry in this effort for almost a year now, and we plan on starting to field the automated airspace authorization process at the beginning of 2018. For the FAA, this is a small step, but the first concrete step in actually fielding a UTM system. Drone pilots are the newest entrants in our aviation community, and they must embrace the responsibility of operating in an environment that can be unforgiving of mistakes or reckless behavior. The FAA's strategy for addressing this risk relies heavily on spreading safety message and educating UAS users about their responsibilities to fly safe. We continue to make updates to our Before You Fly mobile app, which was created to let people know where it's safe and legal to fly. Education is an ongoing commitment. All of you have to do is go to YouTube and search for night drone flight or drone footage, and you'll find dozens of videos that reflect a sobering lack of understanding of basic safety regulations. We've been fortunate so far that none of these incidences have resulted in an injury or collision with a manned aircraft. But as we all know here, safety should not rely on luck. Safety needs to be intentional. We need to remain engaged in promoting safety, both domestically and globally. To this end, I am grateful that the ICAO UAS Toolkit has gone live, raising public awareness globally of the norms and expectations of safe drone operations. Education is an important part of the safety equation, and I firmly believe that the answers to many of this industry's remaining challenges lie in one trait that has defined it since the beginning: ingenuity. In the last 30 years or so, the real advancements in safety have come through technology. As a result, aviation is safer than it has ever been. New technologies continue to drive the risk out of the system on a daily basis. In the meantime, our job is to capitalize on each incremental step, making sure that we build a framework of performance-based regulations that can easily accommodate change. Every day, a new UAS system and/or operation is fielded somewhere in the world. Every day, we need to add to the framework of regulation in order to maintain safety of the system. A century ago, people couldn't foresee that wood and fabric biplanes would morph into sleek supersonic aluminum jets. And today, we can't possibly predict everything drones will be doing 5 or 10 years down the line. In addition to playing critical roles in disaster response and relief, it it is only a matter of time before drones become routine household items. As long as we continue the journey, as long as we continue to journey down this road together with a focus on shared accountability for safety and a spirit of collaboration and inclusion, we will succeed in meeting these challenges that we face along the way. Again, I want to thank all of you for being here and assisting all the world to become safer and introduce this new technology to our various airspace systems. Thank you, and I look forward to the proceedings for the next over the whole week. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. So we've heard from 2 states, now we have a 3rd state, and each of these are quite different in terms of the environment of the individual states. Italy, the United States, and next we'll hear from Singapore. Singapore being an entirely urban state. So their situation and their approach to rulemaking has to take on some different perspectives that will be very good to hear about. So our final speaker before the coffee break is Mr. Tan Kahan, Senior Director for Safety Regulation and Director of Airworthiness and Flight Operations for the Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore, CAS. He joined CAS in 2009 and is responsible for the safety oversight of Singapore's air carriers, approved maintenance organizations, and design production organizations, drones, air navigation service providers, and many more. So Mr. Tan is a member of ICAO's Committee on Aviation Environmental Protection and the Flight Operations Panel. So he's quite familiar with us here. Mr. Tan, please.
Thank you. Thanks. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is really a pleasure to join you here this morning, but I must admit it is also a little intimidating because I'm talking to a room filled with experts. The fact that I'm the 3rd speaker doesn't help either, because I risk repeating exactly what Alessandro and Earl has to say, to which, if that is the case, I think it is a good thing, because we can have an early coffee break. The second part, if it indeed is the same, then it shows that regardless how big or how small your country is, the problems and challenges you face are exactly the same. Of course, there's the other downside to it. The downside is I could be saying something that's completely off the scale, and if that is the case, then I think we are the only oddball in this room. But after having heard what Alessandro and Earl has to say, I must say, we did not compare our notes. I must say that what I'm going to say has a lot of complementary kind of information rather than repeating or duplicating. And indeed, in Earl's point about collaboration, it is exactly the thing that we need to do. What we do, we should be complementing rather than repeating or duplicating to reduce waste of resources. If you look at this picture here, this was taken by drones. Oh no, I'm just kidding, it wasn't. It was a... As many, if not all of you are aware, we have seen the rapid proliferation of unmanned aircraft system or drones. The civilian and potential use of application of such drones span a diverse range, from recreational activities to more sophisticated commercial use. Examples include surveillance, news coverage, parcel deliveries, and even human transport. And Earl was saying he looked forward to the day when we come to Montreal, take a drone from the airport to assembly all here. I look forward to the day when I fly from Singapore to Montreal in a manned aircraft. And I think it is a matter of time. It is not when, it's not whether it will happen, but it's a matter of time. With significant market growth potential, drones are expected to become a critical enabler to meet economic and strategic outcomes for many countries, not the least Singapore. Singapore's Smart Nation visions aim to take full advantage of technology to solve problems address challenges, and develop Singapore into one of the outstanding cities in the world to live in. Part of that vision is to promote the overall development of UAS ecosystem to enable the safe and beneficial use of UAS, thereby facilitating improvements in mobility, productivity, and service delivery. In our vision, the vertical dimension provided by UAS will be exploited to relieve demand on the road networks, improve logistic networks, improve public agency emergency response and security provision, and improve productivity. In future, passenger-carrying drones will also complement our transportation modes as part of the larger urban air mobility concept. Such a bold vision, however, is accompanied by significant challenges from the public and aviation safety, security, and privacy perspective. There is increased risk of injury to persons, damage to property, or even mid-air collision. This is especially so for urban, densely populated environment with highly congested airspace such as Singapore. As you can see from this slide, Singapore is an island nation with only about 710 square kilometers of landmass, and we have 5 aerodromes. A contrast, if you look at Montreal, larger Montreal area is about 6 times the size of Singapore, and with a population about 3.5 million, we have a population of 5.5 million. So it is a big challenge. Successfully realizing this vision, therefore, requires the close coordination of various public agencies responsible to ensure public and aviation safety, security, and privacy. This is why Singapore's Ministry of Transport formed a national inter-agency UAS steering committee to coordinate policies to drive the development of UAS ecosystem in Singapore. From the safety perspective, we are progressively enhancing our UAS regulatory framework using a proactive, calibrated, and customized approach. We aim to provide a conducive test-bed environment for emerging technologies, operational concept, and regulatory approaches. We are carving out regulatory sandboxes and drone estates to facilitate the conduct of proof of concept trials for innovative drone use cases by industry partners. For example, we are partnering with Skyways project, with Airbus on a Skyways project in which Singapore is working with them for the last mile parcel delivery in urban airspace, urban environment. Another example is the conduct of food delivery and other technology trials at One North, where many of the high-tech biotechnology firms are residing. To enable a high volume of complex drone operation in our urban, non-segregated airspace environment, CAS is currently working and developing a roadmap on an unmanned traffic management system. The key issues being studied include performance-based access to airspace, safe separation from aircraft and between drones, and of course identification and tracking of drones. While urban air mobility could be best served through point-to-point operations, the UTM that we are considering is likely to evolve through an initial combination of hub and spoke, point-to-point, or even a hybrid model. We are also looking into revising weight categories for drones below 25 kilograms and applying appropriate regulatory requirements so as to avoid over or under-regulating while balancing safety needs. Enhancing drone pilot competency is also one area that we are currently working on. These challenges, I'm sure, are familiar to many of you in this room. The difference may only be in scope and scale. The key, in my mind, is to facilitate the beneficial use of drones in dense urban environments while balancing safety, security, and privacy concerns. We believe that innovative and calibrated regulatory approaches will allow us to safely unlock the potential of UAS, helping to fulfill our Smart Nation vision. A huge part of all this is made possible only through collaboration with partners in other regulatory domains, the industry, and research institutions. Together, these partners provide a vast resource of technological and operational knowledge that we, as aviation regulator, can tap on to address the unique challenges of UAS ecosystem development. As a small nation with limited resources, Singapore collaborates with many other civil aviation authorities to co-chair UAS working groups and share information on the development of UAS regulation. We also partner many homegrown companies such as Singapore Technology Aerospace and Hope Technique, and international companies such as Airbus to test bed and conduct trials on innovative use of drones. The frequent interaction with industry on cutting-edge technologies is critical to enable regulators and industry to co-create relevant and implementable solutions. Universities and other national research institutes are another essential set of stakeholders that we partner to explore operational concepts and conduct research with to aid in policymaking and regulatory development. For example, we partner with Nanyang Technological University and its Air Traffic Management Research Institute to conduct studies on UTM concepts as well as on risks of injury to people from falling UAS at different heights and for different weights kind of UAS. Of course, one critical stakeholders that we must collaborate with to facilitate international harmonization efforts is ICAO. To achieve this, as you have heard from the President himself, ICAO has set up RPES panel, the Small UAS Working Group, and also the ICAO Asia Pacific UAS Task Force to drive the work. However, there is still much work to be done to ensure that UAS can fully achieve its potential. It is important for us to support the work of ICAO and integrate different national efforts seamlessly to minimize duplication of work. What would be useful is to develop guidance material for small UAS urgently, as this is an area that many countries are grappling with at this point in time. I know I stand between myself and your coffee break, so with that, I wish you a lively and productive symposium ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tan. So now we've had all of our opening remarks for the morning. And before we move on to that coffee break, we have a few more housekeeping items that I want to cover. So we have one moment. So we suspect that you will have a few questions to be asking speakers and moderators during the week. So we have worked out a way of facilitating that, other than just simply raising your hand, which is to be able to email your questions to plenary@icao.int. And that will come straight up here to the moderator, and the moderator then can facilitate both questions as well as comments to the speakers. So we have plenary@icao.int. Now, you may also be able to raise your hand, and if the moderator is cooperative on that, he or she will advise you and invite questions, in which case you have to push the button on the console beside the little speaker. Until there is a red light on the speaker, your microphone is not turned on. So just watch for that, please. Now, I also want to tell you about the app that we have that you can download onto iPhones, Androids, or other platforms. The app is RPAS 2017. Now, this app has been created specifically for this program, for this symposium. It includes the schedule as well as the exhibition floor plan. It will also allow interaction between you and has a way of evaluating sessions that you will see once you've downloaded. We have a second app for later in the week for Drone Enable, so you'll see that one later. I recommend that everybody download the app. For one thing, it will have all the correct information regarding the program. We have noticed we have a few errors in our printed copy, particularly with times. as well as in one case with an individual's title. So please download the app during coffee break, now, when we come back. And with that, I would like to thank AeroVironment for the upcoming coffee break that they have sponsored. I would ask that everybody be back ready to start at 11:15, but that the speakers and moderator of the upcoming session come back just a few minutes early, at 10 past 11. So everybody, thank you again to our keynote speakers, and enjoy the coffee break.